it was always in our mind that we wanted to have partnerships. We wanted to leverage that as a growth tool. But I think actually when we launched, we thought we were going to be a hardcore direct-to-consumer brand, which again is really interesting because my background isn't direct-to-consumer brand marketing. My background is sports, partnerships, events. And I guess we'd kind of maybe seen the explosion of someone like Gymshark and gone, right, we're going to sell Reflo.com. All our sales are going to be through Reflo.com to start with. Then we'll move into the wholesale business in a few years and then start selling into third-party retailers. And that's going to be the logical route we went down. And that was kind of our initial business plan to an extent. And you have to work bloody hard to acquire a single customer on the website, and it's expensive, and it's Facebook ads, and it's getting X, Y, and Z. So we were doing that, but within our first 3 months of operating, we had two companies, and I'll tell you who they are. Go on the contact us section of our website and send us emails, which were going into Pete's inbox. The first was the Australian Open tennis.
Oh wow!
And the second was the WM Phoenix Open, the biggest and most sustainable golf event in the world outside of the majors.
Well, that's handy people to contact you.
Yeah, it's like that. And actually, it was the agencies that were related to them rather than them directly. And all of a sudden, you get one order through that, which is profitable and is thousands of units. And we were battling hard to acquire one customer on the website. And then the WM Phoenix Open was the same. We're like, we want every WM employee at the event to wear Reflo because we can't find good sustainable product. And then the WM Phoenix Open one, as I mentioned before, Pete isn't a golfer. Has very little interest in golf. So he forwarded it to me and says, I think you might know more about this. Is this a big deal? And I was like, yeah, that's a big deal. And then we ended up having our product in the merch tent for 2 years in a row.
Wow.
But that became quite a big thing. So, when those come through, you're like, whoa. And it showed us, then within a few months later, we were approached by a extreme e-team called Veloce. Every sports team in the world, including your local football club, all the way up to Real Madrid and Manchester United, have multiple kits every year. They're a revenue stream for them. So they're a driver of revenue. And they new designs every year, new sponsors every year, and that's not just football, that's Formula One, that is rugby. Every year new kit being created, and almost every single piece of kit that's created there has no end of life solution. Like, these aren't recyclable products. It's more and more kit being created. And the clubs are never going to, we were looking at going, well, how can we approach this differently? And we're like, do we create things with removable logos so they can update but that doesn't fix the answer of this is a commercial revenue driver for these clubs. So no, that's not going to work. That's not a commercial idea. At the end of the day, everything that we do has to be commercial. We won't exist as a business if it's not. So it's like, how can we create something which is more which commercially works for them? And that's where we developed Reloop, which is our fiber to fiber recycling system. So we started to create kind of kits for these teams. Nissan and Jaguar, great example. Last season in the Formula E season, we're taking back 60% of their kit is fiber to fiber recyclable, meaning that we can take it back and recycle it back into a pellet of recycled polyester, which can then live a new life as something new. And that's your end of life circular economy solution. It just wasn't being done. Our football shirts are also in our Reloop technology and can be recycled post-use. So that's something that we introduced, and there was a real interesting demand for it, and we are working with various clubs to do that, and sports organizations, and we realized that was a big opportunity for us. And we love our partnerships. We every one of them we try and work hard with. It's not a badging exercise. There are plenty of brands out there who just want to stick their badge on something and that's done, but try and get closer to the clubs. With Luton, their supporters group are involved in the design of the kit, we try and do as much as possible with fostering genuine partnerships rather than just badging exercises.
The other thing I thought was really interesting, when I sort of looked into it more deeply, was not only the team wear in terms of like the kits from the clubs itself, but it's actually the teams of people who work within these organisations. Because you don't think like a Formula One team is probably a 500 person to 1,000 person setup. They always have to be on brand. They always have to be wearing the merch. They're in Abu Dhabi one week, in Malaysia the next week. So they probably need 5 changes of clothes. And then actually, and I heard you say this on a different podcast, it's a taxable benefit. So they have to give it back. So they're actually tax incentivized to throw this stuff away. So if they haven't got an end of life mentality towards it, then let's say everyone's got five working days in a week. Obviously, that's not probably the case in Formula One. They're probably working 8 days a week.
Yeah.
But they've got every person there has got 5 shirts, and they've probably got the hoodies, and they got the gilets, and they got the caps, and they have got 1,000 people, and they have to give it back, or they get it as a taxable benefit in kind.
Yeah.
So the system is geared up to go, no, just throw the stuff away.
Yeah. Just give it. Well, yeah, not even throw it away. Give it back to, and then the team ends up with an office full of old kit. And
Yeah.
like, well, what are we going to do with it? And it, if it's been worn, there's very little value to that.
Yeah.
But also they've got new sponsors. They don't want to just give it away because their new sponsors are like, why are you giving away product that doesn't have us on there? So yeah, it's quite a complex space, that's for sure.
And you sort of never really had a realization of that until you got into it and like, oh, actually, this is huge.
I kind of saw the amount of product that was being produced, but until I was really in amongst and looking at it with a different lens, I definitely saw it when I was working in the sports industry. I worked in football for a long while, worked in golf, and I saw the amount of apparel being, every golf event, the volunteers and marshals will get a new polo shirt, probably get 2 polo shirts, 3 polo shirts and a cap.
Yeah.
That ticks up. So it's like, well, how can you create something which has a genuine end of life story at the end?
Okay, let's pause there because this is such a good example of how smart businesses evolve. When Reflo started, they thought they were going to build in a particular way, hardcore direct consumer, D2C, sell through the website, grow like a modern digital brand, then maybe move into wholesale later. And that's logical. It's clean, it's clear, it's simple, and it makes a lot of sense on paper. But then reality kicks in. And this is one of the things that I think is really key for business owners. Sometimes stuff that makes sense on paper won't make sense in the real world, and you've got to be willing to be aware of that and then to do something about it. In the case of Reflo, opportunities came from somewhere else. They had the Australian Open, the WM Phoenix Open, partnership demand, teamwear, and that drove large volume orders probably before they thought they were going to get them. It was a more profitable route to market and it gave them faster traction. Here's the really key point that I want to make sure you don't miss. They did not stubbornly cling on to the original plan just because it was the original plan. They paid attention, and that's what good founders do. They had a strategy, but they weren't prisoners to it. That's the difference between being focused and being rigid in business. Rigid founders ignore signals because they're emotionally attached to the first version of the idea. I have definitely been guilty of that, by the way, guys. Focused founders, on the other hand, stay clear on the mission, but they can be flexible on the route to get there. Reflo didn't abandon who they were, they just adjusted how they got there. The mission stayed the same, build a performance wear brand with sustainability at its core, but the route evolved because the market showed them where the leverage actually was. Now that might sound a bit airy-fairy, but very often the market will actually tell you where you should go if you bother to listen.